morning. This is all about the gray rhino. Probably many of you have not heard about the gray rhino. It's like any other rhino. There are black ones, there are white ones. The one that I'm speaking about is in the wild. BTS has sung about a gray rhino, and Michelle Walker has written a book about the gray rhino, actual as well as symbolic. Symbolic of the dangers that are known to us, but we avoid. And the big question is, why do we avoid those dangers? We know that if we see a gray rhino, we're to stay away. Otherwise, it could charge us and kill us. Does everyone do that? Not necessarily. And that's the reason why I'm speaking. Years ago, Nissim Taleb wrote a book called The Black Swan. The Black Swan was about unknown dangers, just like Rumsfeld used to talk about the knowns, the unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. But according to Taleb, there are no unknowns anymore. We know what dangers are in our midst. We hear about it, we see it hurting people, and yet our leaders and a lot of us are powerless against the dangers. What am I talking about? I'm talking about dangers to our democracy, the voting laws that we should be putting into effect. We don't need a filibuster. We need to get real voting laws across the country. And why aren't our leaders acting? It's a real good question. Voter suppression is not what anyone would vote for. We need to curb the COVID outbreaks. Every time somebody is unvaccinated, they are a breeding ground for mutation of COVID, assuring that we will never get rid of COVID in our world. It just travels around the globe, looking for hosts where it can dig in. And when it does, it also has the capacity to hurt others who have been immunized. 99% of the folks in hospitals are the folks who have not been vaccinated. This is a known. It's not an unknown danger. It's known. And what is the other danger that is afflicting us, in addition to our social problems? It's infrastructure, it's pollution, it's pollutants. It's affecting the entire globe. And why should that be? We know that the floods are extreme. Look at the loss of property and life that we've seen everywhere, from here in New York City to Europe, to Germany, to China in their provinces. Subways are being flooded. Infrastructure is crumbling. We know our world is changing. We know our climate is changing. New York City is probably what Washington was like years ago. 1.5 zones of climate have changed in New York City. Our air quality is bad. We're getting the smoke here from out west when they have fires. And people are not doing anything. Years ago at the Ford Foundation, a young woman who was incarcerated did a poster that I thought exemplified our world, which was, "You can't pray away our problems." No siree. We got to do something about it. And I understand the difficulty because denial of problems that affect our very lives are difficult to cope with. I know from experience. When I was a young woman of 14, 15 years old, I came down with an autoimmune disease. Luckily for me, my folks never told me that I was supposed to die at 16. But what nobody else seemed to understand was for me to cope with the pain that I had, I denied the existence of that pain. And I denied it for years. And instead of feeling pain, I would just feel tired. If anyone asked me if I was in pain, even though I clearly had a limp, I would say no. I felt fine. But denying that pain also made it easy for me to deny reality. Anyone else around me, like my kids, if they didn't have a life-threatening disease, and I was also warned, A, that I would never walk again, and I should never have children. Well, I'm happy I had children. However, I may not have been the most compassionate parent around. If they had the sniffles or they had the cut on their legs, sure, I gave them a kiss and I felt a little bit sorry, but my feeling was, you're not going to die from it. You don't get that much pity. Who was I to judge another's suffering? I shouldn't have done that. That was a dreadful thing to do. For them, it was very painful and very real, and they deserved my compassion, and they didn't get it. So I understand why people don't want to get the vaccines. They're thinking about their past and past experiences, and they're not living in the present. I'd have to say, quite honestly, it took me probably until my 60s and early 70s to actually be in the present and aware. Have I learned all I can about myself and the people I love? Not yet, because it's a lifelong process to understand others and to have compassion for them too. You might even not have it for yourself. And if you don't have it for yourself, you can't have it for others. So ignoring what's happening in our world is problematic for us now. We can't afford to ignore the Delta variant and whatever other variants are coming our way. For the simple reason that 99 point whatever percent are folks who are unvaccinated. And if they happen to meet one of us who is older or somebody who has a comorbidity, vaccinated or not, we may not die from COVID, but we will be sick. So we got to think seriously. What are we doing? How are we relating to our world? Who do we care about? Got to care about ourselves first in order to care about others. The Bible teaches us, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. No sense learning about the Bible if you're not going to follow the rules that make us all look at each other and say, we're the same. We are. As Shakespeare said, if you prick us, don't we bleed? We all bleed the same. And what we do in our own little backyards affects the larger community and the country. And as we're seeing now with supply chain disruptions around the globe, we are indeed connected. Everywhere we're seeing disruption of climate, we're seeing tragedy. And it's not just here, and it is known. Around the globe, everyone is suffering from this Delta variant. Not just here, it's known. Even in China, they are seeing, I believe, some outbreaks. Israel is going to put in new restrictions. New Zealand no longer has a bubble with Australia because Australia has outbreaks. So we know we've got the pandemic to deal with, we've got climate mitigation to deal with, and we cannot ever destroy our democracy. There's nothing more important. Goldwater said, extremism to preserve our democracy is a right. And I believe if that extremism is getting rid of the filibuster and voting for the Voting Rights Act so that we have a federal law that unites us, that's appropriate. Just like if we had a mandate that says, you don't have the vaccine, you can't go to restaurants and bars and theater and be on public transportation. Sure, we'd need to be able to enforce it, but it's the right thing to do for everyone to acknowledge that COVID is in our midst, and if we want to resume life again in any form and solve all our problems, we've got to address it. We can't deny it any longer. That's what I was told when I had my last hip revision in 2016. Hip revision means that I've already replaced my hip, and now I'm doing it for the second time. And I was told that as I'm getting older, if I want to live a long life, I've got to think about what I'm doing in the present. Am I experiencing pain? Because merely being fatigued is not good enough. I have to be aware of my surroundings, how I move in my surroundings, and how I feel in order to survive. And, as I always said, to thrive. So, take a lesson from me. Why wait to be in your 70s before you understand how the world works and your role in it? Think about yourself and your families, because the future is not nihilism. It is not denialism. It's not muddying through. The future resides with us and the pursuit of science and math. We're going to have ways to have fourth or fifth generation nuclear power. We're going to also have green hydrogen energy, and we're going to have air conditioning that uses nickel and titanium. I can't believe we can't come up with a computer chip that will power our world and keep us connected as well. I think man's reach should exceed his grasp. We can do anything, and we can do it together in our country and linking hands around the globe. So God bless you all. There are gray rhinos in our midst, but if we act to protect ourselves from their dangers, we'll do just fine. It's never too late to change. And I know from experience, it's hard. So take care, everyone, and have a blessed day. And thank you for listening. Don't let the gray rhino get you. Bye now.